When the president throws around terms like spying, much of the country simply tunes out. When the attorney general does it, it's a whole different story. And now the Justice Department is reportedly concerned about partisan allies of the president using William Barr's phrasing to suggest that something illegal occurred. A person familiar with the Attorney General's thinking said to the Washington Post that Barr was not trying to provide conservatives with rhetorical red meat.
First of all, that's we just have to stop there.
This guy.
Heilman, that's just such a total lie. Everybody on the planet knew the second he said that it was being thrown out as red meat.
Well,
even though he backed off.
Given that he didn't back off that much, we read like a Sean Hannity script, and if he wasn't doing that, what was he doing? Given that there's no evidence for it whatsoever. There's no evidence. So if there's no evidence for it, and you're at a congressional testimony, and you're saying things that sound like they're scripted for Fox News, what other purpose are you serving?
Well, I'd actually say, Willie, that not only was there not any evidence whatsoever of that, improper spying or surveillance or whatever they want to call it, there's actually a lot of countervailing evidence that everything that was done was proper. Because again, 4, 5 federal judges approved the warrant. They were all Republicans. You had Republicans all around this process that were saying, yeah, this is something we need to look into. Everything was done by the book, and there were procedural safeguards, something that Donald Trump hates, something that he considers to be a nuisance, but there were procedural safeguards all along the way.
The surveillance of Carter Page, who was no longer on the Trump campaign when he was under surveillance, went through a FISA court. So your quarrel then is with the FISA court. I think what a lot of conservatives and Republicans don't like is the way that the FISA surveillance was approved. They don't like the basis for it, the information that was provided to the court. But that's the FISA court's decision. The FISA court reviewed whether or not to surveil Carter Page. So you're arguing with FISA, you're not arguing with a political.
Again, well, not just FISA, but also Rod Rosenstein, who signed off, Dana Bente, people who work for Bill Barr right now in the Justice Department, who approved the extension of the FISA warrants. It's not just the FISA; it's like people who currently are Republicans working in the Justice Department who approved it.
I mean, the FISA court wasn't just created a year ago. And the other aspect of it is, if you watch the clip of Bill Barr using the word spying, he's a smart guy. He clearly knew exactly what he was saying.
But his claim, remember,
he used spying.
His claim through associates into the press anonymously was that he doesn't make a distinction between spying and surveillance, and that he did not mean to suggest anything improper was done.
Except for the fact that he said he thought that was wrong. Right. That you do that in political campaigns. Really, seriously, is he that stupid? I don't think he's that stupid. I know there are a lot of lawyers in Washington, D.C. that are shocked by what he's doing right now.
Well, the person familiar
that have known him
for years,
30 years. Democrats and Republicans alike are shocked how reckless and irresponsible and Roy Cohn-like he's being. He's destroying his legacy here. And what happens, Mike, to those people who destroy their legacy? Does Trump say, thank you for destroying your legacy for me by making a fool of yourself in front of the American people, by showing you have no respect for the rule of law? What happens to those people in the end, Mike?
I spoke to a person who...
Let me answer. They get thrown out.
Fired. I spoke to a person who has known Bill Barr for 30 years, 2 days ago, after the spying incident testimony. And this person said, first of all, he was stunned at the difference between the Bill Barr he heard in testimony and the Bill Barr he knew as a practicing lawyer and as a Republican Attorney General. And the second question he raised, I think, is epidemic now in Washington and maybe in certain circles of the media. And it is this: what scares these people so much about Donald Trump that they just give him incredibly stupid loyalty? What is it about Donald Trump that so scares these people?
You know, it's something that Mika and I have not understood from the very beginning. From the moment, and you can go back and look at the tape, from the moment Paul Ryan endorsed Donald Trump a couple of days after calling him a racist, we said on this show, if you stand up to Donald Trump, he respects you. If you speak, tough when you're talking back to him, you know what, then he will actually negotiate back and forth. Nobody in Washington, D.C., since he has become president, has stood up to this guy. Maybe Kelly once in a while. and they
Mattis.
just Mattis. And guess what? Mattis left with his reputation intact.
Yeah.
Anybody in the next administration would love to have Mattis there. But I don't understand that question, why they all fold to him.
Well, he's a bully, and I think that,
Bullies are
people at
actually
right
the
time in
easiest
their
people to
lives.
handle, actually.
So the person familiar with the Attorney General's thinking said he was also using the word spying in the technical sense of collecting intelligence. The president,
By the way, I
and
see
his
people
allies,
on Twitter, by the way, that
Yeah.
know better. People that have been in news for a very long time that I've respected, just making fools of themselves here. That's all I'll say. It's embarrassing. And I respect them, so I don't respond. But they make such fools of themselves. And it makes me really sad.
So the president and his allies see no such
Makes me
nuance.
sad.
Take a look.
Said in
Mr. President, are you pleased that your Attorney General yesterday said that there was spying into your campaign in 2016?
Yes, I am. I think what he said was absolutely true. There was absolutely spying into my campaign. When the Democrats go behind the scenes and they go into a room backstage and they sit and they talk, they laugh because they know it's all a big scam, a big hoax. And it's called politics, but this is dirty politics, and this is actually treason.
Now that, thank God, we have an Attorney General who calls spying for what it is. In late 2015, early 2016, spying began on the Trump campaign. That information leaked that led to what they considered to be legal spying. Then you have the culmination of the ultimate spying, where you have the FBI director spying on the president, taking notes, illegally leaking those notes of classified information. Why? So they could appoint a special counsel to spy on an acting president again.
Again, well, I don't know about Devin Nunes, all right?
No, skip him.
But everybody else knows better.
Okay, Benjamin
Like
Wittes.
anybody that has ever met people, judges who are on the FISA court know, these are the best and the brightest. They're also pretty tough men and women. They take their jobs extraordinarily seriously, and dumbasses like that are accusing FISA judges of being part of a conspiracy, a political conspiracy, should be ashamed of themselves. They're a disgrace to this country, and this is once again, and Donald Trump's done it all along, this is once again an attack on the federal judiciary. It's that simple.
Benjamin Wittes has a new piece for Lawfare entitled Bill Barr's Low Moment, and he writes in part this: the use of terminology like spying and spying on a political campaign is bound to play into ongoing conspiracy theories promoted by the president himself about the origins of the Russia investigation. When the Attorney General has questions about the conduct of his department, the proper thing to do is not to dangle those questions in a congressional hearing in a fashion bound to stir up conspiracy theories. In the Daily Beast, Rick Wilson,
Republican Rick Wilson,
calls Bill Barr the most dangerous man in America. And he writes in part, Barr won the job by writing a memo before he knew a single fact contained in the Mueller report. Its tacit and overt promises were irresistible to Trump. As Attorney General, Barr would protect this president from charges of obstruction. Barr knew then and knows now that he has an audience of one, Donald Trump. Like Barr's job application memo, every word of his testimony this week screamed out obedience to the president. And former senior advisor for the Oversight Committee, Kurt Bardella, writes in a new piece for NBC News, it is painfully clear that the Attorney General cannot and should not be the arbiter of what Congress and ultimately the American people can see when it comes to the Mueller report. There is no reason why Democrats or the American people should have to settle for anything less than the full and complete report, not some sanitized version manufactured by a presidential public defender.
David Ignatius, we've talked to people in Washington who are depressed by the decline of Attorney General Barr, the way he's performed publicly for Donald Trump's benefit. What insights can you give us on Barr, as well as the Washington legal community's reaction to this performance this week?
Joe, Barr was supposed to be the professional, the person who had Justice Department experience, who could be counted on for at least professional judgment, measured judgment. And I think the reason that people have been so shocked is that in his comments, especially about spying on the Trump campaign, he is feeding a narrative on the right that essentially there was an effort at a coup d'etat against President Trump that was run by officials of the FBI, officials of the intelligence community. It's the most poisonous narrative that you could have. And the idea that the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, with all these crazy rumors swirling, would feed them with these loose comments, it shocked people. And it's a sign, in part, as you said earlier, of how frightened Barr must be. He's clearly not a disciplined speaker. But I note the reaction overseas. I've been traveling a little bit abroad recently, and people watch what's happening. One person said to me, a prominent Asian, "Your country is lost." And I think that's increasingly the perception. Another said to me, "We're concerned about our ability to continue cooperating with a country that's in this much chaos." So the stakes are high. I hope Barr understands that. I hope it's getting through to him that he made a big mistake and that he ought to do something about it.
Well, the Attorney General, Willie, took a bad situation, made it much worse, not only with domestic implications, and he's going to be proven to be a liar, and he knows that. You know, he already
that must have been worth it.
He's already going to be outed as sanitizing the Mueller report, and so now that he's close to getting exposed there, he now launches a new lie, a new conspiracy theory, throws bait out to the most radical anti-law and order people in America, and sends a message across the globe that this is a country that is spiraling out of control because of its president.
The Barr's claim that there was spying is rightly getting the headline, but the follow-up questions that took place in that hearing, when someone asked him, "What evidence do you have of spying?" he said, "I have no specific evidence," and went on to say, "I have questions and concerns," which makes it more reckless to make the claim of spying without any evidence. And Yamiche, the president, as we just played, and as you would expect, seized on this, and in fact took Barr's claim even further. He said, "I'll go a step further. I'll say it was illegal, it was unprecedented spying, and that it was in fact treasonous." So the president has his headline now from the Attorney General without evidence, and he's going to ride that as long as he can.
I think the key really is the follow-up questions and the idea that Attorney General Barr could not provide one single basis for why he believed that there was spying going on in the Trump campaign. And I also want to point out the Devin Nunes comments, the idea that Devin Nunes is saying that James Comey, because he was writing contemporaneous notes on a meeting that the president asked him to attend, was somehow spying on the president. That's not spying. That's what everybody, all the sources I've talked to say. In the FBI, they're taught to take notes. They're taught to document the things that happen. And then you have this idea that now you have a sitting member of Congress saying that Robert Mueller was spying on the president when in fact he was carrying out an investigation that the American people were paying for. But I think it goes back to this idea that President Trump, as a core of who he is in some ways someone who likes to traffic in conspiracy theories. He started his political life by saying that President Obama might not have been born in this country. Then during the Republican nomination process, he was talking about Ted Cruz's father possibly being involved in the murder of President Kennedy. So I think what you have is someone who's seen conspiracy theories work to his political benefit, and that's why you're going to see not only the president but the people around him, the people that want to stay in his orbit, are going to really echo his own behavior.
Except now, Mika, the conspiracy theory is supported with the authority of the Attorney General's office. Yeah. So it's not just Donald Trump floating out a claim.
Whole new level.
Jack Reed, Senator Reed from Rhode Island, is the senator who asked him that question. Do you have any proof? The Attorney General of the United States replies, "Not really, I don't have any proof," but didn't have the common sense or the awareness to walk back what he said. And as a result, you end up with the president using the word treason.
Again, that's what Roy Cohn told Joseph McCarthy to do in the Senate. Throw out charges that will grab the headlines, inflame the right-wing base, when you have no evidence of those charges.
Here's another giveaway. You know, this week, where it's Friday, right? It's the end of the week. We looked at these 2 days of congressional testimony with Barr and the clarity they brought about what I don't know what has happened to him, but what he is now is very clear. And I think beyond this discussion, some of the most striking things that day that were giveaways were on other topics. His answers on the Affordable Care Act, when he's asked, well, will people lose insurance if the Affordable Care Act gets struck down? He says, well, Donald Trump wants to have a replacement plan. Well, that's a political answer.
Yeah, that's not
an Attorney General's answer.
Yeah.
They asked him about the drug crisis and about opioids. He talked about why we needed to build the wall. Again, it has nothing to do with opioids, and also it's just a political answer. It's like he's now making the kinds of arguments that the White House communications director would make or the White House press secretary would make. He's been, to your point, Mika, fully Trumpified, and the extent to which he now is operating not as an Attorney General, a quasi-independent appointee, head of the Justice Department, but he's acting as a purely political hack, basically, for the president. It was just on full display this week. There's no real argument about what he's doing now.
David Ignatius, so what are the operating theories? Why would a man with a reputation, a good reputation through the years, why would he just completely drive his reputation into a ditch? And it is, make no mistake, it is driven into a ditch. And when the facts come out, his reputation will be sullied forever. Why? What are the operating theories in Washington why he would do this?
I think the biggest is that there's been a counter narrative being spun for more than a year now by Republicans that this was an improper, unethical, deep state attempt to reverse the election results. That's what many Republicans believe. Devin Nunes is the leader of that group. But you read this in the conservative press. They've got a lot of memos they spin back and forth.
But I'm saying, well, why would Barr go there when he knows? He knows the process was proper. He understands the role of FISA judges better than anybody else. He knows the surveillance would not have been approved, would not have gotten past 4 or 5 Republican-appointed federal FISA judges. He knows that. So what is the operating theory on why he would throw that conspiracy theory out, sully his reputation, when he, more than anybody else, knows this was a legitimate inquiry?
There are two possible answers. One is that when he read the Mueller report, which we still have not, he looked at the evidence and decided that there was far less than he had expected of wrongdoing, and that he had questions about how the investigation got started in the first place. I think the more troubling one, and likely the more accurate, is that his good sense has been broken down by being in Donald Trump's Justice Department as Attorney General. He is surrounded by people who believe these conspiracy theories. It takes strong character in a period like this to resist lies. You have to stand up. You have to take risks. And Barr, looking at him, I felt looked like a weak Attorney General who was not prepared to dig in and tell the country the truth, even though it would risk meaning the president was angry at him. So he didn't seem like the man to do that.
So let's have a little cleanup operation here. I'm going to bring up 2 names of people when the time came that their country called on them to do the right thing. They did it. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. He did what was required by law. He did what was required by the ethics of the situation. And yes, I'm going to say it. Matthew Whitaker.
Okay.
When the President of the United States pressured Matthew Whitaker to do something that he knew to be improper, he stood up to the President of the United States. Let that be said.
This is a good
And what happened to both of them?
Yeah, they're both gone.
No,
I'm just saying.
I'm upping your argument.
reputation intact.
Maybe the reason is simple.
extent.
That William Barr is the Attorney General of the United States, and he likes his job, and he knows that part of
Wants
this
to
job
stay
and
in
this
it.
administration is
That's
to
not
lean
his
toward
job.
the president.
He's the Attorney General
I
for the
agree
American
with you,
people.
but I think he
You're
assumes
working
that
for the wrong person.
if he stands up, he may suffer the same fate that Jeff
that's
Sessions
just-
faced.
So he stirs conspiracy theories. What's worth
Great.
that?
But the problem is
what is worth
the problem is it's
that?
not like he's had this job for a long time, right? He kind of begged his way into the job.
Right.
He campaigned for it. So it still raises the deeper question. Before he became Attorney General, Bill Barr's reputation was fine. But he forced him, he kind of begged to get the job, now has the job, and now is doing these things. So it's kind of like, what would make you want to put yourself in a position where your reputation was almost inevitably going to be tarnished if you did the job for Donald Trump? I don't really get that.
I was talking to Mika about this last night. I said, I saw your father as he was getting older. Maybe it would have been exciting for him to go back into administration. And then I just cut myself off. I said, your father was asked. He would never, ever compromise, not for 1 second, who he was, what he believed, his sense of public service. And there's so many other people out there that would do that. You know, I've heard stories of other administration officials just speaking truth to power. George Shultz, you know, when the former EPA chief went out and talked to the Hoover Institute, and everybody was around and being not. Who was the former EPA chief? What was his name? Well, quickly we forget. Come on, he was
under Reagan?
No, under Trump. The guy, Scott Pruitt.
Oh, right. I thought you were talking about the Reagan years.
We were going for historical analogy.
So Pruitt's at the Hoover Institute, and they're trying to get right by the Trump administration, and everybody's sitting around and they're talking. You know, how great, Pruitt. Thank you for coming. George Shultz walks up to him, looks at him, he goes, you know, you are the single least impressive human being I have ever met in my life.
That's
he turned around and walked away. That's a guy that doesn't play along.
I think that's something your dad said to Joe once.
Well, you
Once. That was a long time ago.
It was stunningly superficial.
Whatever.
We can
Close.
get-
In the ballpark.
He loved you.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.